Hey everybody, this is Zach over at The Edge Pro. The video you're about to watch is from our archive of training DVDs that we sell on our website, and now we're just kind of putting them out there for you guys to view on YouTube. If you enjoy the video and you learn from it and you'd like to learn more, obviously you can go and check out all our other YouTube videos, like this one, and follow our page. Um, we have lots of similar content out there. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. And you can also visit our website to view products that are going to be in these videos. Um, Hopefully you enjoy the video and it's got some great content in there. However, we would caveat that these videos are older and have quite a bit of outdated content, and there's some better information in some of our newer videos, and hopefully in videos that we haven't put out yet. Um, Again, we're simply posting this for some historical reference, and maybe you can pick up some tricks, or we say something in the video that is a different way than you've heard it before and you find it helpful. In any case, we hope you enjoy the video and can benefit from it. Thank you guys. Make sure you like and follow.
Hello, I'm Robert Schissel with Nebraska Blades. In our first tape, we demonstrated the different angles needed on knives for the job they're expected to do, and how easy and quickly we were able to achieve those angles on the True Hone machine. Today we're going to continue on, and we're going to do some work on some serrated knives. We're going to fix some badly damaged knife. We're going to touch on sharpening meat slicers and servicing can openers. Now the first knife we'll take a look at is serrated knife. We're going to sharpen this at a steep angle on the True Hone machine. Now remember, we're going to go to the 7 o'clock position. See that our wheels are just overlapping. Now we want to bring the wheels apart. This would be set for cook's knives. We go around 1 revolution clockwise. That would be for boning position. Continue around 1 more time, end up at the red dot. Now our wheels have come apart, and we can cut the steep angle required on a serrated knife. We want to come up and actually get into the scallops. So we're going to turn our speed control to number 7. Our angle is on the red dot, and we're going to make enough passes to raise a new edge. When we're satisfied with the edge, in other words, we see no dullness, it feels sharp, we're going to move our angle control down to the white dot. We're still on 7. We're going to make 2 passes only. Now we have a new edge. It is very sharp, but we still have a burr on the side of the knife. So now we move our angle control down to the blue dot, turn our speed control down to about 3. We're going to make several passes and remove that burr that I can feel. Now we have a sharpened serrated knife. Sooner or later, the serrations are going to be worn off, and we're going to have to cut new ones if we want to continue to use this knife in service. The fact that we own it, we want it to last as long as possible. Now we're going to cut our serrations with the twice as sharp machine. It's a scissor sharpening machine. We're going to use the clamp. We're going to set the clamp at the steepest angle, up to 50. Clamp the knife about midway up the blade. Safe glasses on. We're going to turn on the machine and we're simply going to follow the existing serrations that are in there. We're going to bump into the wheel at each serration. Now, if you would wear the serrations off, if you'd go too long before you reserrate, at first you may want to hold another serrated knife along this edge, and with a quickie or a magic marker, mark where you want to cut each new serration. We don't have to go deep. When you use a fresh wheel, you're going to have a steep corner. As it wears, it will be more rounded, and I actually like it somewhere in between. You can dress this wheel to suit your needs. You would continue up the entire length of the knife, finishing it. Now my handle is off to the left-hand side. After I finish cutting all these serrations, I would move the handle to the right-hand side and reclamp it in the same position. Now on the second side, we just merely have to, more or less what I call, just kiss it out. You're just going to remove the burr that you produced and put a slight edge on the other side. Very light touch. At this point, you may be satisfied with the edge. You're going to check it to see how nice it looks. If you feel you got too deep of grinding marks in it, you can turn the knife over to the buffing wheel. Now, when we're in the buffing position, the knife edge has to be pointed down. We're up here to cut into the grinding wheel, but for the buffing wheel, we need to put the edge down, and we're going to do that by just simply turning over the clamp. Now we're going to continue to buff, and there again we just touch. We bring it out each time and hit each serration. When we're finished, we're going to observe our edge. Now the knife will still have to be sharpened in the true home machine, so at this point we would take this newly serrated knife, come over to our true hone, and sharpen it lightly several times on the true hone, and we'd have an edge, we'd have a knife that we can continue to use for many years. Now some other tools you may want to carry with you for simple repairs is a hammer, maybe a small ball peen hammer, a piece of hardened steel. What you're going to run into, you're going to find spatulas, for instance, that are used in a restaurant to flip eggs, hamburgers, and it needs a relatively sharp edge on it. But you will find damage, especially on the corners, where it's been wrapped on the grill many times, and it no longer will slide under food. What you would do in a case like that, simply go to a block and hammer it out. You're going to repair that damaged edge. If it's too bad, what you might have to do is grind very deep and remove the damaged edge. Oftentimes, you can fix the minor things with a hammer and a steel block. After I hammered the edge out that it is smooth again, I would go to a belt sander and I would reform this edge. Remember, this is not a knife edge, but it has to be able to slide under the food, eggs in particular, hash browns, hamburgers. So they want a straight edge. They want to be able to go up into the corner of the grill. Many breakfast cooks are very particular about their spatula, and if you can fix them for them and repair them and bring a nice edge up again, they're going to love you. Some of these cooks actually will take this home with them overnight. They don't want anybody else to touch it. Now you're going to use your hammer for other types of work. This knife has a large chip out of it. The tip has been broke off, and oftentimes when these break off, it will actually be folded over there. You'll feel the curve, and before you start grinding, you probably want to hammer that out. You would go to your steel block, your ball peen hammer, and you would work the edge till you have it smooth again. Now, on a knife like this, in order to fix it, you can't just grind in this spot and this spot. You have to remove the entire edge till you're below the nick. In practicality, after we fix this knife, we probably would not use it in a restaurant, but we would sell it on an aftermarket to fishermen or anybody that wants a good quality knife, but it's no longer usable in a restaurant. So the easiest way to do this is to put another edge, compare it to another knife, and you can see the amount of work that you're going to have to do. We oftentimes take a magic marker and we're going to mark this edge where we're going to remove the metal. It just makes it easier when you're working on the knife. We actually will also mark the other side, because in working the edge in a grinder or a belt sander, we're going to be working on this side. We'll flip the knife over and work on this side. So we would continue to grind this up to our mark, would reform this tip. We can do it on a grinder. We're going to come in at a relatively steep angle, fairly blunt, because remember, we have a hollow grinder and we can recut this hollow grind when we're finished. This tip also needs to be dropped down from this side. There again, you compare it with a good knife, an existing knife, and what you want to do is try to match that edge. This is kind of fun to do. I enjoy doing it, and after a while you can become very good at it. Along with a grinder, you may want to use a little grinder. We can also use a belt sander if you prefer. We're going to work that edge, bring it down. Now, one thing to keep this edge entirely flat, oftentimes we're going to do some rough grinding, and then to get it evened out, we can bring the knife straight down on the belt sander at an angle, and we can form that. Now remember, we don't want a reverse bow. We don't want the blade to be curved up. We don't want anything hanging down. So we want a flat edge on it, but we're still following the curve of the knife. We'll show you how to re-hollow grind this knife in a few moments. Our finished product is going to look more like this. We're going to cut a new hollow grind in here and then sharpen as normal. Other things you may run into are dough cutters. There again, they have sharp corners. Oftentimes, there again, they're going to have to be hammered out if they've been damaged or abused. Hammer them out. Go to your belt sander. Create a new smooth bevel. And even this dough cutter, when we're finished, we're going to move it over to the true home and make several passes and have just a nice tiny little bevel. This would be cut, this would be ground in a cook's position, or perhaps even steeper. You don't want a razor sharp edge, but you want an edge that will cut and also slide and pick up. Some of the other tools used in a restaurant that can be sharpened quite easily. This is a blade for a meat grinder. You can see it has sharp edges. This will become damaged. This goes against a plate. It's revolving and it forces the meat through these holes. Now, on a blade like this, we're going to come over to our twice as sharp machine, turn our clamp over, move our angle probably to about 0. You'll have to match the angle that is on the cutter. We simply clamp up as normal. Do a bit of a scratch test to see where our grind marks are going to end up. Turn on the machine. Make your passes, probably not too many. Take them light. 3 passes is better than 1 heavy pass. And remember, you have 4 sides to cut. After we're satisfied with our edge, we would take a hone, a pink hone, and we're going to remove the burr we produced. Now remember, you have to keep the hone flat. You can't tilt it this way, you can't tilt it back, but just keep it flat. Remove the hone and you'll have a very sharp edge ready to go. Now on the plate itself, this plate has holes. The meat is forced through the holes, and these actually have sharp edges. Now, from constant use, these edges, these little round edges here, will actually wear off. So the way we sharpen these, and it's not a huge business for us, but if someone has them, we can do them for them. We simply put this on a clipper blade machine with a flat plate. We hold the blade with a magnet, we come down on a plate, and we sharpen it till we have a new surface. It is two-sided, so it can be flipped over, and you can repeat the process on the other side. One of the most troublesome items in a restaurant is their can openers. Now this is a small model. This is a number 2. There's a number 1, which is much larger. It's almost identical to this. This actually fits on a base. This base is mounted on a table with screws, and a can opener goes in this way. Now when they actually want to open a can, they raise the handle and they come down, pierce the can with a blade, and then this goes in this position and they turn the can. Now they may be opening dozens of cans, and one of the problems is when the health department comes in, the first thing they look at is their can openers. And you'll see on many can openers there's a lot of muck and dirt in here. So what a restaurant oftentimes does, they'll take this can opener when the inspectors are coming, and they'll simply run this through their dishwashing machine, and it cleans it up very well, but the detergents are very caustic on these items, so it becomes very stiff and very difficult to use. So you may have to oil a little bit. You'll have to use a vegetable type oil. You can use a petroleum product because it is going to be used on food. Now the most common repair that you're going to do on this, you're not going to ever sharpen this blade, but this blade becomes dull and you're going to have to remove it. There's 2 screws here. We can give you places where you buy new blades, wholesale price, and you simply retail the blade to them and put it in for them, and you can charge them for that. Okay. I would recommend that when you buy new blades for replacement, you also buy these screws. Now, as I said, oftentimes the first time in a unit, these screws are going to be very corroded. They probably have never been removed, and so you may actually damage the screw in taking it out. Sometimes they're so tight, you may have to take your screwdriver and go into the edge and tap it so you can break that screw loose. A little bit of WD-40 will work, penetrating oil, but remember, if you use those products, be sure and clean it up afterwards. You don't want WD-40 in food. So we're going to set the screw aside, remove the second screw, now the blade will come out. This blade cannot be resharpened. At least they never recommended to be sharpened, but it is two-sided. So the first time you're in there, you probably can take the blade out. Looks like this. This is a blade for number 1. You can see it's quite a bit larger. There again is two-sided. So you go into a unit, you flip the blade over. You want to maybe put a scratch mark on it so you can remember if it's ever been flipped. If it's been flipped twice, you give it back to the restaurant and you replace it with a brand new blade. And there again, you just insert it, put the screws back in. A number 1 can opener, which is larger than this, will have a little different mechanism in it, put together slightly different, but you just remember how you took it apart and put it together the same way. Second most common problem with a can opener is this gear. This gear has teeth on it and is made to engage the side of the can and turn the can as they crank this handle. Now, a new gear has sharp teeth on it, will grab the can and will actually spit it around. On a used can opener, especially if they were using a can opener with a dull knife and it's cutting hard, they'll actually strip this gear out. And so as they're turning the handle, the gear is turning, but it can't move the can around. Now, this is an up and a down. The other side, in other words, it's actually marked with this side up. So when we install this new gear, we want the upside up. Now, oftentimes, the first time you ever take this gear out, you're going to have to jam it with a screwdriver to hold the gear in place, and then you're going to back off the handle. You simply spin it around. After you have it loose, you can remove your screwdriver and you see it comes out. Now, this I would take some WD-40, maybe some light sandpaper or emery cloth, and I would clean it up. As you can see, there's a lot of corrosion, a lot of dirt. The gear itself at this point just simply falls out, and you would set that aside, probably return it to the restaurant manager, insert the new gear, make sure you read which, this is the front, this side is up, so it's going to go in this position. And after you've cleaned this up, probably clean in there, you're going to reinsert the gear. Start turning the handle. And you tighten up the gear. Now the gear will start turning as it tightens up. And now they can do their cans. So remember, you have two parts on a can opener. Pretty simple. You have the knife, which cannot be resharpened, but it can be turned over and used twice. You have the gear, and if they're using new knives, if you're, say once a month replacing these or turning them over for them, this gear should last a long time. However, if they're using a dull knife, it's going to be very difficult for this to work, and they're going to wear out the gear. We have a service charge to replace these parts, plus we retail the parts to them. All these parts can be bought individually. The gears, the shaft, there's a spring in the number 1 can opener. And you clean them up. Remember, do not use a petroleum product on them. For the final lubrication, you can use some vegetable oil or some oil approved for food service. You would go back in the base, and it's ready for service, and it will work like a new one. And there's nothing more frustrating to try to open a can and it won't open. Spend a lot of time spinning this handle and it doesn't work properly. So that's a very good service that you can offer your client. You're not going to make a ton of money, but it's great to be full service and be able to do everything. The next item we're going to address is the meat slicer. Many accounts have meat slicers, nearly all of them, and many of them do not realize that they can be sharpened. They normally come with their own sharpening system, and they can be sharpened, but no one in the unit knows how to sharpen them. Now, this happens to be a general model. It was made in Italy. Probably the most common model that we find in our part of the country is the Hobart. And the Hobart makes 4 or 5 different models. They're larger, but basically they're all the same. Now, the first thing I want to show you on this slicer here, it has a slide. This is a guard. It's moved up. The food or piece of meat is put in here, and then they should be using this handle to actually slide through the blade. Now, as you can see, this handle isn't sliding very good. It's sticky, and they want a smooth operation. So we're going to clean that up with some WD-40 or some type of penetrating oil, and then clean it out with a cloth, and then re-oil it with a vegetable oil or an approved oil for food service, so that this slides easy. This also has a track on here. The Hobart is a little different, but you can see where it slides. This is gummed up a little bit. So we want to clean off this guide just with some oil, penetrating oil. There again, down in this area, you don't want to flood it with penetrating oil, but it is out of the contact area of the food, so you can use more of a petroleum type product on here. Each slicer that you run across will be different. There's Globes, there's Burkle, there's many different brands on the market. They're basically the same, but they will have somewhat different mechanisms. Now, on this slicer, we're going to remove the carriage. It lifts straight up. This can also be flipped over, and you can see where it slides, and you may want to clean that up so that the idea is to have it running as smoothly as possible. We're going to set this guard apart. Now, remember, you're going to be dealing with a very sharp edge here. And what I like you to do before you start working on the machine is actually unplug it so the machine does not come on. If you've never worked on one before, it can be very dangerous. These are in the units. I mean, people use them every day. If the guards are in place, you're in good shape. But turn the machine off before you start making any adjustments and see how it's working. This adjusts the thickness of the food you want to cut. On this particular machine, the way it is sharpened, we're going to have the guard at 0, so you can't even get in there. On this particular machine, this safety guard up here is actually the sharpening. You remove this, loosen this knob up here, and you notice this guard pops up. It can be removed, but it simply pivots. And you can see in here, there's grinding stones. There's a grinding stone for this side of the blade, and there's a honing stone for this side of the blade. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I'll turn the machine on, and I'm going to push down on the sharpener. It's going to engage the wheel and start the sharpening process. I'm probably going to sharpen for about 20 seconds. I'm going to turn the machine off, make sure the wheel has stopped spinning, and I'm going to check for a burr. You'll feel a burr on the right side of the wheel. It should be all the way around. And then I'll show you how to remove the burr. So we're going to turn the machine on, make sure you know where your hands are. Make sure you know what's going on. Pretty simple, huh? We're going to check for our burr. It's not quite there yet, so we're going to continue to sharpen. On this side of the blade, I can actually see sparks coming off. Now, you would continue sharpening until you raise that burr. Still not quite there. I usually do it in 20-minute increment or 20-second increments. There we have our burr, just a slight burr. You can feel it all the way around. Now this has a plunger for the honing blade, so while we're sharpening, we're actually going to plunge in, and then we can lift up on the sharpener attachment to disengage, or we can just simply turn off the wheel. Probably only have to hone for about 5 seconds. Now we can disengage it, we spin it around, and it goes back down and it's locked into place. Oftentimes, this is in a bad position. This is going to be spinning, throwing food off, so a lot of times these wheels in here, now this is a unit off of a Hobart. Sometimes these wheels are really packed up, and matter of fact, you may have to take the wheels off and free them up. They should spin freely. A Blaco also has a mechanism on top for sharpening. They're kind of hidden. You actually have to look for them. A lot of times they don't even know in the unit that it has a built-in sharpener. This is by far the simplest, safest way to sharpen. This is a unit for a Hobart machine, and this will fit many of their different models. When you get into larger ones, it will be very similar to this. It has a grinding wheel, and it also has a honing wheel, which you can engage by pressing in. Now, this will be hidden from view in storage. In other words, it's going to be stored underneath the machine in some position, maybe over here. This would be all the way under. This machine has a bottom, so I can actually put it on there, and probably all you'll see on the outside of the machine is this little knob. It could be on either side of the machine, depending upon the model. On some machines, there's a little plastic flap, a little door right here. You lift open the door, and inside there will be this sharpening mechanism just clamped up in there. I've gone into units, and this was missing. And oftentimes, there'll be a storage area, a drawer, where you pull the drawer open, and there it is. No one even knows it exists. It could be in a bus tub underneath the table. But look around, and you can usually find the existing sharpener that went with the machine. If it is totally lost, what you might want to do is buy, say, a Hobart sharpener that you can put on your different machines. And you can maybe go to a used restaurant supply house and find a unit like this. Or, worst case scenario, you buy a new unit, probably a little over $100, but you can sharpen all Hobart machines with this. Now, on most Hobarts, you would set the control at 50, which you can see it drop the guard down. And there's going to be a little notch cut in the bottom of this plate here. This simply would snap up in there. You would tighten the knob, and you can see you're positioned to sharpen. When you're actually sharpening, make sure your hands are free. This is clamped tightly into position, and to engage a sharpening wheel, you would move the cutting blade up until you hear the sharpening action. We're going to sharpen for about 20 seconds, unless the blade is really bad, and the first time in a unit you may find these in terrible shape. But try 20 seconds, turn off the machine, make sure the blade is not spinning, and check for your burr. If you have a long ways to go, you turn the machine on, probably sharpen for 20 seconds, maybe 40 seconds, turn the machine off, make sure the wheel is not spinning, and check for your burr. When you finally have raised the burr with it still in a sharpening position, you're going to press the honing wheel. and you just press down. You continue to do this for maybe 10 seconds. Turn off the machine, make sure the burr is gone, and then remove the sharpener, put it back in its position in its storage area. From time to time, you may want to put some, on this you can use oil because you're going to clean the blade afterwards. You can put some oil on this so the next time you come in, these are in good shape. Sometimes, with the sharpener in position, these stones will be badly loaded. In other words, they hardly even work. With the machine spinning the honing wheels, I often take a stainless steel knife and put it against the honing wheel to kind of dress the wheel and expose a new wheel, new grit. I oftentimes clean them up with like Ronson cigarette lighter fluid. That works very well. It's put on there, it will soak in, it will remove the grease. Remember, a restaurant is usually a very greasy environment. They have French fryers running, they have grills running, so oftentimes there'll be grease on the wheel. Now, before I ever even sharpen, I'm going to close the wheel, make sure it's tight that you can't get in there. I'm going to take a soapy rag, and with the machine on, I'm going to clean the blade. Now, oftentimes a restaurant will clean the slicer up, but they actually won't run it, and you will find grease on this blade. I am going to clean both sides of the blades. Make sure your guard is closed. Before approaching this blade, always double check to make sure your fingers can't get in there. When you have the grease off, and you'll be surprised how much you take off, even on a clean machine, then you proceed with the sharpening process. Now, replacement blades are available for these machines. You can buy the same brand. The guard comes off, set it aside. On this particular model, there's 3 screws that are going to hold this blade on there. There again, they probably are going to be corroded and rusted, and you may want to put some penetrating oil on these blades, on these screws. You take a screwdriver, you may have to use a hammer to tap them loose. You remove the 3 screws. Each blade will be different. Each model will be different. You remove the blade and you put on a new blade and retighten it. Now, on many Hobarts, as you sharpen this blade, the blade is going to become smaller from the constant grinding. At some point, with the guard in position, you can actually get your finger in between there. And I usually use that as a rule of thumb. If I can get the ball of my finger to touch that blade, it needs to be replaced. In other words, it's so small that this guard is no longer protecting the blade, and someone could get a serious injury. On many Hobarts, there's an adjustment in this plate, usually Allen screws, that you loosen, and this blade will slide forward. So as this blade becomes smaller, you can make adjustments with the plate, move it forward, that you keep this very small gap. Again, when it wears enough that you could actually get your finger in there, it's time to replace the blade. But these blades should last for many, many years. But eventually you may have to replace one. Remember, you can buy aftermarket blades to fit these various machines, or you can buy the actual brand name and put the blade in them that really belongs in there. Now, you can add a service charge for this sharpening, and on the invoice, I usually include sharpening, cleaning, oiling, lubricating, and all these various parts that I can see. Like in here, I'm going to spray with some WD-40. Now this, you can use WD-40. It's not exposed to food. After you've used the WD-40, you probably should re-oil this track so this slides as smoothly as possible. On many Hobarts, on one side of the machine, there's going to be a a bar that comes up that you simply press down, and this will raise the front of the machine up. It will be sitting on its back legs, but now you can look underneath there and you can see the stainless steel bars that these mechanisms, this arm travels on, and also the guard. Clean those up. You can use petroleum products down there, re-oil them, and that's part of your service, that you lubricate, clean the entire machine. So when they walk up to it, it's virtually going to work trouble-free like a brand new machine. And it's really surprising to me the number of units that, number one, they don't realize it can be sharpened with their own sharpener that came with it, and that just with a little maintenance, cleaning, oiling, the machine can be brought up to new standards. It's actually much safer when the blade is sharp and the mechanisms slide, so that they're effortlessly moving the food through there. When you have jamming, when arms don't move and they're using force, and that's when you can have a serious mistake. Now, one of the favorite machines that I own and what I really like to operate is the True Hone hollow grinder. Now, we made this purchase about 12 years ago, and it was very expensive, and we debated whether we could afford it or not. But I was working very hard on knives. Our volume had grown quite high, and if you can see on a knife like this, it's kind of shaped as a triangle. In other words, this edge is very thick. As you travel down, it becomes thin. But as you sharpen and are cutting these new bevels, you get into this thicker part of the blade. So periodically, we like to run our knives through the hollow grinder. We don't do it every time. We kind of call them, and if we're not sharpening within a minute or so, the knife is set aside. When we accumulate 15, 30 knives, we then will turn on the hollow grinder, re-hollow grind them in this area here. This area right here, we're going to re-hollow grind so that we can easily sharpen them with a True Hone. This was like adding 2 employees. I made the purchase one time. After that, they work free. They have the electricity and so on. But they're faithful. It gets our knives in shape that we can resharpen them, and it makes our operation far more efficient. Now, we're going to turn on the machine, and it's going to be a bit noisy, and I probably won't be able to speak, but I'll show you some of the controls of the machine. It has 2 revolving wheels. It has 2 motors. I'm going to put the knife in this slot here, and I'm going to pull it forward. Check my hollow grind. May have to make another pass. It has a mechanism. It's hooked up to an air compressor, and it has diamond dressers for each wheel. Before I actually hollow grind a knife, I'll actually dress a wheel, and it's automatic. I press a button. It's semi-automatic. I have to press the button, and I'll dress this side and then reverse the wheels and dress this side over here. When we turn on the machine, the first thing I'm going to show you is the dressers moving across the stones, and then I'll will hollow grind a couple of knives. You can hear the unit on. We're going to turn the machine on. Now let's take a closer look at that edge that we just produced. We hollowed out this side of the knife on both sides. Now it's thinned out. We can quickly go to our equipment, our true hone equipment, and we can bring this up in just probably 30 seconds. We're going to have a perfectly sharpened knife. Some of these other knives, that's the new hollow ground that we produced. It's on either side. Just a very nice edge. Here's that knife that had the bad chip in it. It had the broken tip. We fixed those. We ground that off. We cut a new hollow grind in it. And it's ready to be sharpened. At this stage, we can sharpen this knife very fast, probably in about, I know, under a minute, probably more like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Then producing a new bevel, sharpening the edge, and removing the burr. So the secret is this machine allows high production. As I said, it's like having another 2 employees in your shop doing the work for you. We've had no trouble with this machine whatsoever. It does a wonderful job for us. After the knives are properly hollow ground and ready to go, we come over to our sharpening area. Now, this is a vacuum table, and we have a 4-inch vacuum on it. So as we're grinding, the dust is being sucked out and out to a remote location. We have 3 machines set up, so we don't have to change our angle guides as we move our knife through. This is going to do our bevel work. This is going to put our edge on, and this machine over here with 1000 grit is going to remove our burr. So the first thing we want to do, these are cook's knives that we're going to sharpen, and then we're going to sharpen a bony knife and a butcher knife. So we want to find our position again. I always go to the 7 o'clock position, see the overlap, know I'm ready to go, move it up to the red position, set my speed control at 7. The second machine, I'm going to do the same thing, set it up identical, go to the white dot, speed control at about 7. And then our third machine, we set the angles the same. We remain at the blue dot, and this machine we're going to turn down to about 3. Now with the 3 machines running, you aren't going to be able to hear me speak, so I'm just going to sharpen them as I would, and you just follow with me. We're done with those cook's knives. Now we're going to sharpen a butcher knife, and we're going to sharpen a bony knife. We're going to bring the wheels farther apart, so one clockwise all the way around. End up at my red dot. End up at my white dot. And end up at my blue dot. sharpen knives. They look great. They certainly cut. These knives will go into the unit, be out there for probably 2 weeks, and then we'll gather them up and resharpen them again. One of the great things about the True Hone is you can start out with a single machine, and whether you're a rank amateur or have been sharpening for years, you can use the machine, produce a very good edge. As your business grows and you expand, you can add machines. The ultimate is a hollow grinder, which makes your life so much easier, but you can do huge volumes of knives. You can hire it out. You can have an employee. You can train them very quickly on the machine. They're not going to hurt anything. They're not going to damage. But we've been with True Hone for many years and enjoy their products. Now, if you purchase a hollow grinder or a large knife sharpener, such as that machine there, the factory will actually come out, set it up, and give you some training on it. So it's a good thing, and as you grow, and you will reach to a point where you can't grow any larger unless you make the purchase of some additional machines. I thank you very much, and I hope this tape has been useful to you, and I hope you can go out and make some money. I thank you.